Visit Tudor Place through April 21st to experience ancestral spaces, people of African descent at Tudor Place. Curated in collaboration with the descendant community, this multifaceted tour gives voice to the enslaved and free people who lived and worked here, and recognizes the site was supported by the forced labor of generations of Black laborers. Tours Tuesday through Sunday. Advance registration recommended, but not required, at tudorplace.org.
Today on CityCast DC, there is an epic fight over redeveloping a chunk of public land in Chevy Chase, DC. It's a fight that involves affordable housing, NIMBYism, historic preservation, and just what DC is going to look like in the 21st century. The Washington Post's Meagan Flynn is here to walk us through it and to explain why you ought to pay attention even if you don't spend any time on Upper Connecticut Avenue. Oh, and after the interview, senior executive producer Priyanka Tilve will be joining us for a conversation sponsored by Alliance Francaise about the organization's exciting summer opportunities. Stick around to learn more. Today is Thursday, March 7th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. Hey, Meagan.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So what is the deal with this library/community center in Chevy Chase?
Well, it's been a topic of debate for months, but the biggest development is that the city recently issued a request for developers to submit their big ideas for how to redevelop Chevy Chase's library and community center, which has not undergone significant upgrades for decades, while other libraries have. So it's something the community, wanted to see, but what has divided them is that the district also wants to use this opportunity to build more affordable housing on the site. This would involve leasing it to a private developer, which would execute that vision. And the RFP leaves it open for either like home ownership opportunities or rental, but would require that 30% of the housing be affordable. Those who are opposed say they aren't opposed to the principle of affordable housing, but they oppose combining housing with this civic site, with the public civic site. So that's essentially what's happening.
So can you just describe this for folks who don't traverse Upper Connecticut Avenue, what's the neighborhood and what's the site like right now?
Yeah, so this Connecticut Avenue, it's really the busiest commercial corridor through that largely residential area, and that is where the library and community center sit. And so they're wanting to kind of, use the site as to make it really attractive to both people, walkability, you can get there, you want to go there, do something architecturally interesting with the site.
And the idea, I guess, is there's a library and there's a community center, and they're surrounded by some lawn and a playground and a parking lot. And the idea is to now have a library and a community center, except they'll be like the first couple stories of buildings that then above them have housing or something.
Correct. I mean, that's one possibility. There's no real set plan right now because they're just receiving ideas. I think there's lots of different ways that developers could look at it, but certainly a priority for the community is they really want to see a lot of green space, a lot of open space, recreation space, which is part of what DC wants as well. Where people disagree is some of them think that makes it incompatible to also have housing at the site. Those who support the housing say, look, this is a great opportunity. We really need more affordable housing in this area, and we should welcome that opportunity. So that's kind of where the debate about the vision for the site unfolds.
So I live in this area, and it's my neighborhood, and it's insane, the debate. I mean, it's taken on a very aggressive, sometimes hostile edge. It seems to me you've got, one group of people who, they bought into a neighborhood that they assumed was going to be sort of leafy and plenty of parking and not that much chaos. And then other folks who are like, would love to have more stuff around, more things they can walk to. And in that way, it's a lot like debates in all kinds of DC neighborhoods and inner suburbs. Can you break down some of the debate that you have witnessed?
The group that has been sort of leading the opposition, Chevy Chase Voice, distributed a petition which strongly opposed leasing the public site to a private developer for the purpose of building housing. They also argue we also have rent stabilized housing in this area. We also have voucher holders can access this area. We don't need more affordable housing. On the flip side, other groups who have been canvassing the neighborhood, like the Washington Interfaith Network, pointing to data showing that as far as dedicated affordable housing goes, which excludes, rent-controlled housing, which is open to any income levels, the area really falls behind the rest of the city and is trying to say, we need to do our part. And so those are the two groups that are really at odds. And there's also Chevy Chase Voice has a lawyer who has threatened litigation, especially considering there are old covenants on the back half of this lot that prohibit multifamily housing and saying that should be enforced. In fact, we should not, it's right there in the covenant, at least on this back half of the lot, it's prohibited. Councilman Fruman is leading legislation that would seek to void those old covenants, which the city believes are likely unenforceable. They were developed kind of in the same era as restrictive covenants that were racially discriminatory. And so he has a bill for both types of covenants. And while especially the racial covenants are no longer enforced, wants to see the multifamily housing covenants officially voided with no room for ambiguation. And, so we might see legal action on that. So it's really heated. Honestly, these community meetings and just the passion that people have about it is still kind of remarkable to see, over just this one site that clearly means a lot to people in this area. And I think just overall, no matter where they're standing on it, that's still pretty awesome for that level of community engagement in a single project like this.
And this is most of the proponents that you've described are kind of making it almost in charitable terms, right? That the city, we need to have more things that are accessible to people who are at a certain percent of the median income. There's also, in arguments like this in and around DC and kind of all over blue America that has incredibly expensive housing, is an argument, I think, that's just look, this is a big city. And we have the legacy of these zoning rules that were designed to pretend it's a small town. And it's pretty dumb to have parcels of land and not intensely develop them. That seems to be with the effort to undo these covenants, that trying to get rid of that kind of zoning is also seems to be part of the conflict. And maybe some of the anger on the side of the people who oppose it is that they feel like they got the bait and switch.
Sure. I mean, it's as far as the litigation goes, which also Chevy Chase Voice is opposing zoning changes, which could dictate how tall the building can be, the density of the building. All of that is still not completely resolved and it's still being worked out. But their big argument is that, well, the covenants for this exist for a reason, which is to maintain low density. They say, that's what we signed up for in this neighborhood was a low density area. And this vision, kind of combining all of this activity into one development, in their mind goes against that and isn't what they want. So that is where you see a lot of that heat is, what is this neighborhood designed for? And then others say, well, yes, this is now a buzzy commercial corridor, and we should lean into that. We should create more of those opportunities to draw in more people, more residents on this strip. And so that's definitely where a lot of us is at odds.
One of the themes that comes up in it, too, is what I think you just alluded to, is historic preservation. This neighborhood was developed with a certain kind of Victorian look, and we should try to maintain that. For a long time, historic preservation was the sort of a thing that the mostly liberal city like Washington liked. Who could be against preserving history? More recently, it seems like it's become a target of people who are yeah, those kinds of arguments have been used to keep stuff out that would maybe make it easier to not be super rich. Do you get a sense of how effective historic preservation arguments are in an argument like this in 2024 in DC?
One thing where a big part of the vision is preserving, they call it the neighborhood context in the development, because certainly that is something that neighbors want to see like respected in the development, is like, making sure that it fits in. And, I'm sure like this is an element, no matter where they fall in the debate, is that they want it to make sense in the surrounding area and not be like, some people have described it like a 90-foot tall skyscraper or something that is going to look like super out of place. And the district has tried to quell some of those concerns by saying, of course, we're going to ensure that it like fits within the context of the neighborhood. And so you certainly do see some of those concerns, but at the end of the day, like the people who are supporting the housing say, there's really not a problem. You can do both. It's not either or, it can be both.
Let's be real. Lawsuits are not fun. But with Paulson and Nace, at least they're a little easier. Paulson and Nace is a DC law firm in every sense of the word. It was founded here in 1979. The two partners, Chris and Matt Nace, were both born here and are local leaders who care deeply about the DC community. Paulson and Nace handles medical malpractice, wrongful death, and other complex injury cases when someone has been hurt by the negligence of others. And they don't just settle every case. They'll go to court. They'll fight for you. Paulson and Nace has even been recognized as one of U.S. News' best law firms. So, if you have been hurt or have lost a loved one because of someone else's mistake or negligence, call Paulson and Nace for a no-obligation consultation. Visit www.paulsonandnace.com or call 202-463-1999.
Shipping can make or break a sale, so optimize how you ship your orders with ShipStation. They make it easy to automate and manage orders no matter how big your business grows. And they might even be able to help reduce shipping and warehouse costs. So optimize and keep up your momentum for growth with ShipStation. Sign up for your free 60-day trial now at ShipStation.com and use the code POD. That's ShipStation.com with the code POD.
So this takes place against a backdrop of a lot of concern about affordability in the city more generally. There's not enough places for people to live who want to live here, particularly people without a lot of money. Can you give some sense of why DC feels like they need more housing in general, and then why more on this particular spot?
This is part of the mayor's affordable housing goals that she set for 2025 to create 12,000 new affordable housing units by 2025. She created goals for specific planning areas in DC, one of which is Rock Creek West. And that had the highest goals among all of the planning areas, in part because it was, according to the city, the farthest behind and had fewer than 1% of the district's dedicated affordable housing units, according to one of the city's studies. That count, again, did not include the rent-controlled housing. So when they're looking at this neighborhood, they're saying this has a lot of room for growth for affordable housing. And the problem with the neighborhood is there's not that many opportunities for new affordable housing, for building it, because it's very built out. And so this site, they say, is most advantageous because the district owns the site, so they can make those decisions in redevelopment. Many of the neighbors who are opposed to this say, look, we do support affordable housing, but don't put it here. Why don't you pick a different site? Why don't you put it, there's several other opportunity zones that had been identified for possibilities.
Do they have specific places in mind?
The district identified about 8 sites that had opportunities for redevelopment that could potentially include a housing element. There's only one, though, that's owned by the district, which is, they can actually act on that on their own timeline, making their own, decisions, issuing the RFP now. And so that's why they say, we need to seize this opportunity. And considering there's not that many areas where they can do that themselves. And so that is why they've identified this as just an opportunity that they want to use for the mayor's affordable housing goals.
So for people who don't either live in Chevy Chase or spend a lot of time thinking about wonky affordable housing policy, this seems like a thing that ought to matter to them. Can you explain why this should matter to folks beyond the immediate neighborhood?
Sure. I think the goals are citywide for a reason, which is that the city as a whole has become increasingly expensive to live in. And, for those who go out hunting, for an apartment, they're looking at 2-bedroom, well upwards of $2,000 a month, and the stock of affordable or low-cost housing available significantly reduced between like the 2000s to the mid 2010s, leading up to where we are today, to where people are leaving the city. They're being displaced from the city due to housing costs, and especially at a time when the mayor is trying to attract more residents to the city. Like, that isn't what the city wants to see. They don't want to see their longtime residents being displaced because they can't afford to live here anymore. And so the city is taking kind of like a whole city approach to finding areas to, open up access, especially to a place like Chevy Chase that, that is historically not that accessible to people of modest means. And the opponents to the housing component point out they can access that in the form of rent-controlled housing, or if you have a voucher, you can access market rate housing in theory at anywhere in the city. Obviously, that's sometimes easier said than done for some of those folks. But at the end of the day, this is still about, like, the city says we need everything that we can get here. And so we're going to put it where we have control to do that.
So, Meagan, what happens next? Are there next dates on the calendar or shoes that's got to drop?
Yes, the RFP is due by April. And so at that point, the city is going to be assessing the different proposals. Eventually, once a proposal is selected, that's going to, launch a whole new phase of, I'm sure, community feedback and I'm sure even more disagreement. I think in that where we can definitely expect that here, probably to pick up, after late spring or the summer.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And listener, don't go anywhere. In just a second, we've got a segment sponsored by Alliance Française. Our team lead, Priyanka Tilve, is chatting with the organization's head about summer planning and cool events and trips you could join. Stay tuned.
Hey, I'm Priyanka Tilve, here with Sarah Diligenti, the Executive Director of Alliance Française.
Hi, Priyanka, and nice to see you again, or to be with you again on CityCast.
Sarah, it is so good to chat with you again today, especially because it means getting to look forward to warmer weather. Tell me about the summer camps that AFDC offers.
Right, yes, we have a tradition at Alliance Française where we try to do summer in French with fun. And so we have weekly themes starting at the end of June, ending in the middle of August. Each theme is different.
What kinds? Like, can you give me some examples?
Sure, yeah. I mean, the most popular ones, you will, of course, think about that. But for kids age 5 to 11, the most popular thing is still cuisine. Or maybe it's their parents who wants them to cook.
Of course.
Yeah, so we have that cuisine. We have Lego now and again. We have a lot of the popular camps are based on science, like STEM or robotics or recycling science, something new. Of course, all of that is made in a way that the kids also learn some French.
That's really cool. So it's like the themes are a way to create conversation that they then get to practice their French, talking about basic things, interesting things around their world.
Correct. So when they arrived on the first day of camp, we quickly try to assess their levels, and we separate them by linguistic level, not by age. So like a child of 5 with a child of 11 could be in the same room if they're both bilingual or if they're both beginners. That's what we want to make sure of, that they are separated by linguistic level, because it makes more sense for us to do that. They have fun. They have a typical day, which includes, class in the morning, class in the afternoon. There is a story time or quiet time at the library. We have a huge library for children. We have a lunch in the park when it doesn't rain or when it's not 120 degrees under the sun. We have physical activity. Some weeks we have one day of initiation to judo.
Ooh.
We have also an entire week dedicated this year to the Paris Olympic Games, of course, with a lot of activities. And we do have field trips as well.
Wow, that's amazing. And I really love that you do break up the groups by linguistic ability rather than age. That's really smart. Have you decided on the exact themes for summer 2024?
We have actually. So we have week 1 will be the les petits gribouilleurs, which means the small artists, definitely. Then we're going to have small francophones, i.e., they will explore all of the French-speaking world. And then they will have the small botanists, the small heroes, and that doesn't mean that you have to wear a cape. And then small artists, small bakers, so they'll be visiting a bakery, as well as small judokas at the Olympic Games, which will be our last week.
Oh my gosh, do you offer these for 30-year-olds?
No, unfortunately.
Bummer. And then I understand you also have some programs for teenagers, right?
We do. We have some classes for teenagers, so we're starting around 12 to 17, let's say. We have either complete beginners, they can learn French. Otherwise, if they have had French at school in the DMV, the District Maryland, Virginia area, then they can sign up for either French language review 1, 2, 3 level, and even for a class of AP French preview, which is quite useful, especially if you're at French level 4, and you want eventually to take AP, which is quite different than French 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So that gives you an idea of what's going to be asked of you for one entire year before your exam.
That's amazing. All of this sounds so educational, but also really fun. And that's cool that that opportunity exists here in DC. Is there a deadline by which people have to sign up if they want to join any of these programs and summer camps?
Well, they have to look up for the early bird discount, which is sometimes at the beginning of April or end of April, depending on the class. That will be $20 off the tuition if they want to follow that. Our space is small, and so we don't take more than 10 children per group. So seats are limited. So they sell like hot cross bun, basically.
I can imagine.
There is something I forgot to mention, which is very important. On Fridays, the last day of each summer camp, we offer kids a French pastry.
Ooh.
Is a croissant or chocolatine or something like that, which comes from our local partner French baker in DC. And we also this year will attempt to renew with the tradition of a small performance at the end of each week. Maybe they have a little skit or little thing they want to recite. So we like to do that, which we did in the past, and that we want to do it again now. So parents can come and attend and applaud their kids.
That sounds like an incredible time. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. This was amazing.
You're welcome, Priya. Talk to you soon.
And again, check out francedc.org to learn more. We'll have that link in our show notes as well, so you're just a click away. Thanks for listening.
And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not break the ice at your next neighborhood debate about development by telling everyone to listen to us? And check the show notes for more information about Alliance Française's summer camps. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.